In this series, and exclusive to this channel, I'll be taking you through the evidence in full that Lucy Letby gave to the court during her 10 days on the witness stand. The purpose behind this series is to give you, the viewer, a full and factual understanding of the evidence presented to Lucy Letby during her original trial. What you'll hear next is Lucy Letby's cross-examination in court. This took place at Manchester Crown Court and was conducted by Nicholas Johnson, KC. I'd like to move on now to the case of Child F. I don't know where you put them, ladies and gentlemen, on Friday, but the defence statements, please. I'll start with that. We'll have to rewind a few pages back to Child F because I've taken this one out of the chronological sequence. You deal with this case as follows. Paragraph 79. I did nothing to hurt Child F. Then paragraph 80. I did not administer insulin to him or interfere with any of the total parenteral nutrition bags as to make this happen. Because I know I didn't do this, but I'm being blamed for it, I cannot accept that the material readings and measurements over the relevant period or blood analysis are necessarily accurate. If Child F did receive insulin that he shouldn't have received, I did not do that. At paragraph 81 you say, I wasn't the designated nurse for Child F on the 4th to 5th of August 2015. Paragraph 82. I do not specifically remember hanging up the TPN bag at 0025 on the 5th of August. I think I signed for the bag and Nurse A hung it. Then paragraph 83. If you change a long line, then you change the TPN bag. Finally, paragraph 84. The TPN fridge is locked. You have to get the key from the shift leader in order to gain access to the fridge. Is that what's in that document? Yes. And is that true? Yes. Do you dispute the readings and measurements over the relevant period? No, I accept them now. At this point I didn't, but I do now, yes. Okay, that's fine. And by readings and measurements, what are you talking about? The insulin level and the C-peptide level. The reason I asked you the question in that way is because there are a number of issues here. The principal issue, of course, is the one you have identified, which is the insulin and C-peptide. Yes. But there's another issue as well, isn't there? Which is the blood sugar levels of Child F over the period with which we are concerned. Yes. So you've accepted the first point. Do you accept the blood sugar level readings? No, I think there may have been some discrepancies. Right, well, we'll go to the specifics. But what are you saying in general terms are the discrepancies? That there were values that were different on lab results compared to results taken either on the unit or on the blood gas machine. Well, there is only a single lab result, isn't there? I can't recall. Do you remember the evidence of Professor Hindmarsh, who told us there is always a discrepancy between lab results and blood gas readings because of the morphology of analysis? Yes. Because it's a spun sample. I don't off the top of my head remember the precise detail, but there tends to be about a 10 to 15% discrepancy. Yes, I wasn't aware of that until then. But putting that issue to one side, apart from that issue, are you disputing the readings of, in effect, the gas machine on the ward? No. All right. And just paragraph 82. I'd like to ask you a question about that. You say you don't specifically remember hanging the bag, but you think Nurse A hung it. Yes. It's probably me being a bit slow, but I don't understand how those two statements go together. You either remember it, or you don't. So do you remember? No. Well, why do you think Nurse A? Because I signed the bag with Nurse A. Nurse A was Child F's allocated nurse. I don't recall hanging up the bag, so to me the only person who could have done is Nurse A. So because you don't remember doing it, it must have been her. I'm not saying it must have been, but I think, yes. You'll remember, I'm sure, that on May 18th I asked you whether you agreed that Child F was poisoned with insulin. Yes. Remember that question? Yes. And you did agree? Yes. As you agreed that somebody must have given him insulin unlawfully? Yes. Do you still agree? Yes. Another question I asked you was whether somebody had targeted him specifically. Do you remember that? I don't recall, but... Right. Well, I am suggesting that somebody did target child F specifically. Do you agree or not? I can't answer that. You did agree that a mistaken administration of insulin wasn't an option here. Do you still agree that? From the neonatal unit, yes. I don't think that could have happened on the unit. Do you accept that somebody put insulin into the TPN bag or TPN bags that was or were connected to child F? I don't think I can say exactly what was in what bag, but I accept that he was given insulin at some point, yes. But the insulin has to have come from the bag, doesn't it, given the evidence we've heard? Do you accept that? Yes, if that's the evidence, yes. Yes. When you were arrested, you didn't know about C-peptide, did you? No. You didn't know that if a blood sample was taken from a child who was being given exogenous insulin, that fact could be proved by the disconnect in the ratio between the level of insulin and C-peptide. You didn't know that, did you? No. I didn't know anything about C-peptide results, no. But had you ever heard of C-peptide? No. Under questioning from your own counsel, you were asked a series of questions about the insulin and TPN being in the same fridge in what is a busy room. Yes. But whether or not the room was busy, somebody put insulin into that bag, didn't they? If it's agreed that insulin was in that bag, I can't say where it went in, whether it was on the unit or elsewhere. I can't answer that. I'm sorry? Elsewhere? Where else? The bag comes from the CVAS unit. So it could have been done by somebody in the CVAS unit. Is that what you're saying? I can't say, but you're asking me if it was put in on the unit. I can't answer that. But potentially the bag has come from another area, and I can't answer what happened in that other area. So that you can bear this in mind as we go along. This is one of the reasons that I'm dealing with child F and child L together. All right? Yes. Because I'm going to suggest to you that the insulin that went into child L's dextrose bag definitely went in on the neonatal unit. All right? Okay. We'll come to the reasons for that in due course. The bag was changed, wasn't it, at midday on August 5th, after you had gone off duty. Do you remember that? Yes. And so given that the evidence shows that insulin continued to be administered to child F, either the giving set wasn't changed or a second bag was contaminated. Yes. Do you accept that? Yes. I'm going to come to the population distribution now, please, which is at tiles 100 and 101. Here we see, beginning with nursery 2, that you were in nursery 2. Child F was the designated charge of your friend Nurse A. Yes. You were with a baby ME. Yes. In nursery 3 there was, so far as we can tell, a single child, CE, and 2 children in nursery 4 being looked after by Valerie Thomas. Yes. There is an anomaly in the sense that there were 2 other children in the unit that day. Yes. One was JE, who was being looked after by Cheryl Taylor, who had a baby in nursery 3. Yes. From a practical point of view, was it common for one nurse to have a baby in nursery 1 and a single baby in nursery 3 as well? Sorry, can you say that again? Yes. I'm going to suggest to you that normal practice would suggest that because CE was in nursery 3 with Cheryl Taylor, the overwhelming likelihood is that so was the child JE. It's likely, but it's not. I can't ever say definitively. No, of course not. Well, there was certainly no shortage of space in nursery 3, was there, on that information? No. All right. That leaves one other child, EJ, who was being looked after by Sophie Ellis, who I think on November 23rd told us that she couldn't remember where he was. Okay. But insofar as we can determine the location of these children, the child with whom we are principally concerned, child F, was in the same room as you. Yes. Are you suggesting that staffing levels have in any way contributed to the poisoning of child F? I can't say how the insulin got there. I can't answer that. But it's nothing to do with the staffing levels, is it? I don't know how the insulin got there, so I can't possibly answer how it might have happened or why. Well, hasn't somebody deliberately put insulin into the bag? If the evidence is accepted it's gone in, yes. And that can't have anything to do with staffing levels, can it? Again, I don't think I can answer that because I don't know where that insulin came from or where it was put in to answer that. As you wish. Whether it was on the unit or elsewhere, I can't tell you that. When you were interviewed by the police, you were very keen to know whether they had access to the TPN bag, weren't you? Yes. Why? Because I was being accused of placing insulin in the bag, and I thought that if the doctors had raised an issue and these levels were so abnormal, that somebody would have thought to check the fluids, which is what we do routinely. As we've seen in other cases, we'll keep the fluid bag if there are any concerns. But even if an analysis showed insulin was in the bag, that wouldn't prove that you had put it in the bag, would it? No, I don't understand what you're asking me. Well, I think I wanted them to check the bag, yes. I felt that would be standard practice. If at the time the doctors had concerns about the results, then they would have checked the fluids, or made a point of looking and reflecting on the fluids. You wondered whether there was an issue with something else, didn't you? No. No? Can we look at your interview, please? Where is that, please? It's in the first bundle of interview transcripts, so interview bundle 1. Just to refresh our memories, particularly as we're jumping around in the chronology, the first interview took place on the 10th of June 2019. Do you see that? Yes. You'll remember that was a case we were told it was only referred to the police because of what had happened to child E. Do you remember? That's why the first interview is a year later. Oh, okay, yes. So at your first arrest, 2018, you weren't asked any questions about child F or child L. No. Do you remember that? And the reason was, as Dr. Evans I think told us, he was then sent sibling cases from what he had identified as being suspicious cases. Yes. So lest anyone has forgotten, that is the reason why you weren't interviewed the first time. If you go to page 16, please, so midway down the page, you ask a question. Can I ask a question about this in terms of the bags and everything? I'm assuming they haven't been kept or checked, post-event. You knew very well, didn't you, that the bags hadn't been kept? No, I didn't know whether the bags had been kept. Did you think it was likely they would have been kept? Knowing that I kept the fluids for child A and other babies, but I felt that if the doctors had raised a concern at that time, then yes, potentially the bags would have been checked, yes. Well, let's see what you were saying in this interview back in 2019. It's towards the bottom of the page. Is it likely the bags would be kept? 5 lines up from the bottom. And what was your answer then? No. To be fair to you, at the bottom you are then asked, you have asked a question, so are there cases when they might be? And you say, if there's a baby there's been a concern about, we would keep the bag, usually ask someone to check that bag or check the pump. But you knew, didn't you, that no concern had been expressed at the time, no I did not, about the bag, didn't you? I didn't know anything at this point, at this interview, no. Do you remember me asking you a few minutes ago about whether you were thinking there was another way out for you? Whether there was some other issue with the bag or an issue with something else? Yes. And you said no? Yes. Just look at the bottom of the page. You were asked this question. Okay. Is there a reason why you've asked that question? What's going through your mind? Asks the police officer. And what did you answer? When something's happened in that time, you are asking me if I have given him insulin, and I'm wondering if there's an issue with something else. What was on your mind at that time? What was that something else? That the insulin had come from somewhere else other than the unit. How would the presence or absence of the insulin in the bag have assisted with the question of whether or not the insulin came from the unit or from somewhere else? It wasn't, but at this time I don't think it was suggested it was in the bag. We didn't know where. We didn't know where the insulin had come from. No, you did though, didn't you? No, I did not. Because you put it there. No. Do you remember telling the police in interview that you were not aware of there being a concern of child F having blood sugar problems? No. You don't remember saying that? At police interview? Yes. No. If we go back a couple of pages from where we were, do you see that document? Yes. Almost exactly halfway down. Were you aware, Lucy, as to the concerns for child F regarding his blood sugar levels at the time? Okay. And you say, no. Yes. You were aware, though, weren't you? At the time? No. Can we go to the sequence, please? Tile 222. This is after you've just gone off duty. Yes. Did you hear what child F's sugar was at 8? Yes. Do you still say you were not aware? No, I was not aware in this interview in 2019 about blood sugars. No. You were aware at the time of the concern for child F's blood sugars, weren't you? Yes, at the time, because I was there. And you were telling your friend Nurse A at tile 224, 1.8. Yes. And her response was, shit, if we look at the next tile. Had you ever seen anything like this before? Babies with low sugars? Yes. But being given all this dextrose and still having low blood sugars? Yes. You had? Yes. You were trying to put it down to natural causes, weren't you? I don't think I was trying to provide an explanation. I was just stating what the levels were. Let's look at tile 341. What does that say? Wonder if he has an endocrine problem then. Hope they can get to the bottom of it. What did you mean by an endocrine problem? The babies that I've previously seen needing the levels of glucose that child F was needing were babies that had endocrine problems, hyperinsulinemia. Does that mean natural causes? Sorry? Does that mean natural causes? Yes. So you were trying to suggest natural causes, weren't you? Yes, the only other babies I had seen like that had a condition, yes. And you didn't know about C-peptide, did you? No. Do you accept that the TPN bags are not secure? No, I don't. But the fridge is locked. I don't. At what point? I think the bags are secure, yes, in the fridge. Secure in the sense they're under lock and key. Is that what you mean? Yes. They're not secure from someone with the key who wants to tamper with them, though, are they? No. Do you remember the evidence of Mr. Allen, Ian Allen, on November 29th? Not in full detail, no. Do you remember him demonstrating how you can take the supposedly tamper-proof cap off a bag of TPN and inject insulin into the bag? Yes. And the tiny amount of insulin that's required to produce results like this? Yes, but the bags in the fridge are sealed, so you'd have to break the seal to do that. Yes, you either do it as the bag is being put up. And who was putting up the bag? Just remind us. Myself and Nurse A. Yes, or you do it once the bag is up. And you were there, weren't you? I was there when the bag was hung, yes. Yes, and if we look at the staffing arrangements for this shift and the shift we're about to come to with child L, only 2 people are common to each shift, aren't they? Yes. One is Belinda Simcock, and the other is... myself. Yes. So because the bags are in a seal, as you've just described, would that prevent someone from the previous shift having put insulin into the TPN bag without leaving a trace? I don't think I can answer that because I've never put insulin into a bag, so I can't say how it would or wouldn't be done. No, but in telling us about the security of these bags, you referred to the seal. You describe to us what the seal is, please. So the TPN comes with a cellophane bag. How did you get into the cellophane bag? You would tear it open at the time of drawing up the fluids. Yes. Yes. It may be on your behalf the jury would be invited to consider whether or not someone on the previous shift put insulin into this bag, which came up at 4 p.m. I can't answer that. Well, yes, you can help us with the likelihood of it, though, by just answering a few questions, if you would. First of all, do you agree with the evidence that we heard that these bags come up from the pharmacy at about 4 p.m? Yes. So this was a bag that, if it had not been tampered with in the pharmacy, must have been tampered with sometime between about 4 p.m. on August 4th and about 0100 hours on the morning of August 5th. Yes, if it was his prescribed bag, yes. If it was a generic bag, no. But prescribed, yes. This was a prescribed bag, wasn't it? Okay, that's the evidence. Okay. The replacement bag was a generic bag. Okay. So let's just think about this. A prescribed bag came up at 4 p.m. How robust is the cellophane covering for the bag that has to be torn open to get access to the bag? It's cellophane, you'd have to rip it. Is it completely sealed? Yes. Okay. You saw Mr. Allen demonstrate to us how the supposed tamper-proof cap isn't a tamper-proof cap at all, didn't you? Yes. So in order to get insulin into the bag once it's come up to the ward, if it's still in the cellophane wrapper, you have to get the insulin through the cellophane wrapper. Yes. You have to get the cap off the bag, still in the cellophane wrapper. Is that right? If it was put in through that port, yes. Yes. I don't know. The bag was... The jury may want to consider whether this is possible, you see. You don't have to get a needle through the bag and through the tampered cap. Yes. Inject insulin into the bag. Yes. Replace what was thought to be a tamper-proof cap. Yes. And do all that without leaving a trace on the cellophane wrapper. Yes, if that's how it went in, yes. Yes. Whereas the other way of doing it, if it came up to the ward without insulin in, is to do it once you've removed the cellophane wrapper. Is that right? Yes. Which is something that, given the timings that we're talking about, only a person on your shift could have done. Yes. Yes. And there are very few candidates for that, aren't there? Yes. Why would you not put insulin in one of these bags? Why would I not put insulin? Yes. Because that's against all practice. TPN does not have insulin in it. We do not add insulin to anything unprescribed. It is highly dangerous, isn't it? Yes. Yes. Life-threatening to a child of this age. Yes. And it is something that would never cross the minds of the medical staff that someone had done, isn't it? Well, did it cross your mind? At the time, no. No. All right. Let's go to the tile T151, please. This is the intensive care fluid chart, isn't it? Filled in by your friend Nurse A. Do you see that? Yes. There's an entry at 0100 hours, isn't there? Can you see that? On the right-hand side, yes. Yes. It says NG-ASP vomit, and there are 4 pluses here. Yes. I don't think we've seen 4 elsewhere, but here we do. Yes. That we heard in evidence was a large vomit by child F. Okay. And we also heard from Professor Peter Hindmarsh that vomiting is a classic symptom of low blood sugar. Okay. Do you remember that? I don't, but I accept that, if that's what he said. Yes. That vomit was because by this stage, do you remember what Professor Hindmarsh said about the half-life of insulin? No. That if it's in an infusion, because of the rate it's eliminated from the body, you get to the steady state in an infusion after about 25 minutes. Okay? Okay. Do you remember that now? Yes. And of course, this is about, if we're looking at strict timings, it's 35 minutes after, that's assuming that the 1 o'clock is bang on the 1 o'clock. It's 35 minutes after this infusion was started by you and your friend Nurse A, isn't it? Yes. Do you accept that insulin was either in the bag when it was hung, or it was put into the bag shortly after it was hung? Yes. So do you accept that child F was poisoned deliberately? I can't answer that because I don't know how the insulin got there or who put it in there or why. I can't answer that. I'll come back in due course to your searches on various parents in this case. But the mother of child E and F in particular was somebody who you were searching for all the time, isn't she? Yes, frequently, yes. Why was that? The mother of child E and F was somebody who was often on my mind. Child E's death did stand out to me, and I often thought of them as a family. I got on well with the mother of child E and F at the time. What about child F? I wanted to see how child F was doing. What happened with child F that made you think of him? Because I got to know the family, and obviously he was the surviving twin of child E. Right, I'm going to move on to child L and see where the parallels are between what happened to him and what we've just established happened to child F. Okay? Okay. I'd like to start, as I tend to, with your defence statement. This is paragraph 136 onwards. You begin by saying that you did nothing to harm either child L or child M. After the twins had been born on April 8th, child L and child M were put into nursery 1. Amy Davies and I took them to the nursery and we looked after them on their first day. I looked after child L and Amy looked after child M. Then at 138, you say that child M wasn't in a proper space. At 139, child L had low blood glucose levels. There was a conversation with Dr. Bomick about why we were starting child L on fluids straight away rather than doing a feed. Normally, if the sugars are low, you feed a baby and move on to fluids if they remain low. Starting with fluids is against that policy, and it means a line is put in when it may not be necessary. Once Dr. Bomick explained why this was the reasonable course to take, we proceeded as she instructed us. And this is what? Is this the hypoglycemic pathway? Is that a reference to that? Yes. And this is an example, isn't it, of evidence that we've heard, that you were more than willing to challenge doctors if you thought they weren't doing the right thing. Yes, when they've deviated from a policy. Yes. Yes. We put the bag up at 11 a.m. on April 8th, and the infusion started at midday. I wasn't due to be working on April 9th, and I was asked to do the extra shift because the unit was so busy and we needed to get the skill mix right. We were exceptionally busy. I think I may have had 3 babies to look after. As a matter of fact, as we will see, you had 2. Yes. Is that right? Paragraph 142. From the medical notes, the second bag of 10% dextrose was put up for child L at midday on April 9th. I did this with Mary Griffith. As the blood sugar levels remained low, a bolus was signed for and provided by Mary and me at 15:40. And just to put that into chronological context, that's shortly before child M collapsed, isn't it? Yes. I cannot be sure precisely who administered the bolus. A new bag of 12.5% dextrose was signed for and given by Belinda Simcock and Ashley Hudson at 16:30. In 1900, a new bag was signed for and given by Belinda Simcock and Mary Griffith. Yes. Then at 143, child M collapsed as Mary and I were making up fluids for child L. His alarm went off, so we went over to him and he was apneic. When I look back, I'm not sure if he wasn't breathing or whether he had had a desaturation. You then talk about child M, so I'm going to skate over that for now because we're concentrating on child L. And to 150, please. I did not administer insulin to child L. I don't understand why child L's insulin test results were at the level they were. Also, I don't understand how the results can have been so abnormal, and yet there was no immediate investigation into this. Therefore, I am unable to accept the accuracy of these tests. Do you now accept the accuracy of the tests? Yes. If insulin entered child L via one or more of the bags that were used, I am not responsible for that. Okay? Yes. So that's what you say in the defence statement. Say for the correction in relation to your acceptance of the test results. Is there anything else in that information that is now on review incorrect? No, I don't think so. No. Right. So I just want to put child L into a bit of context very briefly. Born on April 8th, 2016. Is that right? Yes. As you said in the defence statement, you and Amy looked after 1 twin each. Yes. You had child L. Yes. Amy Davies is a band 6, isn't she? That's right. You identified straight away that the hypoglycemic pathway was not being followed. Yes. And I'm going to suggest to you that that was one of the reasons why you decided to attack child L. No. A departure from the pathway has nothing to do with somebody putting insulin into dextrose, though, does it? No. You told us, I think, that the dextrose bags are stored in nursery 1. Yes. The insulin in the locked fridge in the room where the locked fridge is. Yes. But the fact that they're stored in different places doesn't help us, does it? Because somebody put insulin into the dextrose. Well, I can't answer that. Well, do you accept from the evidence that somebody put insulin into the dextrose? Yes. And do you accept that there is no legitimate reason for putting insulin into dextrose? Yes. That it is highly dangerous? Yes. And that the results of the blood test prove that somebody put insulin into child L's dextrose? Yes. I want to see if you accept any of these propositions. There was insulin in at least one bag of dextrose that was attached to child L. I'm not sure without looking. Well, at least one. We'll come to the precise number later perhaps, but given that you have just accepted there was, well, do you accept it was in a bag of dextrose at any point? Yes, if that's the evidence. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Do you accept that the first time it was done was sometime between midnight and 9:30 a.m. on April 9th? I don't think I can answer that. I'm just reliant on the expert opinion. I don't know. April 8th, 2016 was a long day, so far as you were concerned. Yes. We can see the blood sugar reading in the third column between 10:58 and midnight, can't we? Yes. And we can see the gradual, if you go to column 5, the dextrose rates don't change, or other event column, we can see a gradual decrease in the amount of dextrose being given to child L. Yes. And a gradual increase, albeit with some anomalies along the way, in the blood sugar reading. Yes. It's not a linear progression, it's not a straight line, but we go from 1.9 at the beginning of the day at 10:58 to 3.6 at the end of the day. Yes. Do you remember Professor Hindmarsh saying of the reading at 2400 hours at midnight, I'm quoting him now, one could relax seeing that evolve. In other words, the progression in the blood sugar. Yes, that's normal levels. Yes, exactly. And on this particular night shift of the 8th into the 9th, albeit she was a bank nurse so far as the Countess of Chester was concerned, the nurse was Tracy Jones. Yes. Who we heard is a band 8A. Yes, she is. Yes. That's a very, very senior nurse, isn't it? Yes. Yes. We can see by looking at the chart that you have there that that was the final blood sugar measurement taken until 1000 hours the following morning. Yes. And this is where we come back to a point that we've just dealt with in the context of child F about the half-life of insulin. Do you remember the 25-minute point? Yes. It's that point that led Professor Hindmarsh to say that by 9:30 on the morning of April 9th, somebody had put insulin into that dextrose bag. Okay. Do you accept that as a proposition, first of all? Yes, if that's what he said. Yes. I'd like to look at who was where and who was doing what at about 9:30, okay, that morning? Yes. The first point then. Do you remember me suggesting to you that this was a targeted attack against child L? Yes. Just so you understand, the reason I am suggesting it is a targeted attack is that the same bag was hanging from midday on the 8th to midday on the 9th. Do you see that in the table? Yes. It didn't have insulin at the beginning, on the 8th. No. But it had insulin in it on the 9th. Yes. Yes. So it follows, doesn't it, from that the insulin was put into the bag whilst it was hanging, doesn't it? I don't know. Well, let's just take a step back. We've dealt with the readings on April 8th, yes? Yes. They show there was a naturally resolving hypoglycemia that was resolved by the administration of the dextrose. Yes. So it had resolved by midnight. Yes. But then there was an exceptionally low and series of low blood sugar readings from 1000 hours on the 9th. Yes. It was the same bag that was connected to child L from midday to midday. So it follows, doesn't it, that somebody has put insulin into the bag whilst it is hanging. If that's what the experts suggest, yes. Well, it is what the experts suggest. Okay. Therefore it follows, doesn't it, that it is a targeted attack. The victim has been selected. Well, I can't answer that. All right. Somebody has injected insulin into a bag that is connected to a specific child. Yes, if that's the evidence. Yes. Yes. Well, it is the evidence, just as child F got, on one view of the evidence, 2 separate bags that were contaminated with insulin. TPN bags, in his case. Yes. So let's look at the population distribution for this shift, first of all, please. If we go to, it's page 2 of 12 in a neonatal review, which shows the same information that we have at tile 88 on the screen. Okay? Yes. This shows 4 babies in nursery 1. Yes. Child L and M being cared for by your friend Mary Griffith. Yes. You with GT and TSB. Yes. Nursery 2, 4 more children, 3 with Ashley Hudson, 1 with Nurse B. Yes. Belinda Simcock with 3 in nursery 3. Yes. And then Angela McShane with 3 in nursery 4, and Nurse B with the 4th baby in nursery 4. Yes. So it follows, doesn't it, that the only common nursing staff, the only nursing staff in common between the shift on which child F received insulin and the shift on which child L was to receive insulin were you and Belinda Simcock. Yes. Now, bearing in mind the question or the issue identified by Professor Hindmarsh as to the timing at which the insulin was put in, overnight, under the care of Tracy Jones, child L had done very well, hadn't he? Yes. If we go to the jury bundle number 2, please, there at page 17948, we have the dextrose prescriptions, don't we? Showing Dr. Bomick's several attempts to resolve the calculation on April 8th, and also showing the replacement of the original bag at what you have entered as 12:10 hours. Yes. Albeit I think in answer to your own counsel, you said that actually reads 1200 hours. Is that right? I read it to be that, yes. You read it to be 1200? Yes. All right. Moving on in that document, we have the observation chart at 17978. Is that right? Yes. We have the lab blood results at 17997 with Dr. Yuko's manuscript additions at the back of the form at 17998. Then at 18000 we have the blood gas. Then following that we have the printouts, 2 printouts from the lab, yes, about which we heard quite a lot of evidence. Yes. I'm going to suggest that you put insulin into child L's dextrose bag at about 9:30 or just before 9:30 on April 9th. Okay? Okay. So if we just keep in mind who is where, if we could keep that on the screen, please, Mr. Murphy, and can we go to page 3 of the neonatal review? This shows events that were going on in the unit from the beginning of the shift, doesn't it? Yes. And we can see that child L's entries are in that sort of salmon pink type shading. Yes. And that child M's are in the yellow shading, which is used in other cases for the child in question. Yes. I just want to concentrate on you and Mary Griffith, as you were the 2 nurses that were in nursery 1 with child L and child M. Okay? Yes. From 9 o'clock we see an entry for you in relation to the child GT, who is one of the children in nursery 1. Don't we? Yes. What I'm directing your attention to at the moment is what you were up to between 9 and 9:30. All right? Okay. So starting with tile 21 then, we see an entry made by Mary Griffith on child L's neonatal fluid balance chart, don't we? Yes. And at the same time, you are giving a feed to the child GT. Yes. At the same time as you are giving the feed, you appear to be co-signing medication for the patient AW. Yes. The child AW is one of the children in nursery 2 who was being looked after by Ashley Hudson. Yes. Then in a couple of minutes after that, there's some more medication you are co-signing for AW. Yes. And then between lines 29 and 32 inclusive, 4 entries for the child GT, who was one of your 2 children in nursery 1. Yes. Which you are signing and co-signing with Mary Griffith. Yes. Mary Griffith then left the room, didn't she? as we can see from lines 34 down to 39. I can't say that she left the room. Medications are predominantly drawn up in nursery 1. I couldn't say where this happened. Well, this is Mary Griffith co-signing with a... Who is Angela McShane? She's a nursery nurse. Are nursery nurses allowed to give medications to children? Yes, oral medications. Oral medications? Yes. These are prescribed medications, aren't they? Yes. All signed for between 9:25 and 9:29. Yes. And for the 3 children? Yes. ML, ND, and MB. Yes. And that was the opportunity that you took to poison child L, wasn't it? No. Are you suggesting that staffing levels caused or contributed to somebody putting insulin into the dextrose bag or bags for child L? No, I don't know how the insulin got there. Well, whoever did it deliberately, didn't they? If it happened on the unit, yes. Yes, well, we've already established it has to have happened on the unit, doesn't it? Because it happened sometime between midnight and about 9:30 in that bag that was connected to child L throughout that time. Yes, so then when the cannula is replaced, yes. And that's why it's a targeted attack, isn't it? What do you say? Not by me, it wasn't. If it's not by you, it's by somebody else then, isn't it? Yes. Poisoning a child in the same way that child F was poisoned. Yes. With the same substance. Yes. And is the reality that unless there is more than one poisoner, it has to have been either you or Belinda Simcock? I can only answer for myself and say that I've never put insulin into any bags. It was never suggested to her that she did it, though, was it? I can't answer that. I don't know. We can put the neonatal review away if we go back to the table that Professor Hindmarsh dealt with in his evidence behind Divider 6 in Jury Bundle 1. You asked several questions on May 16th about this table. Do you remember? Yes. I think you started by suggesting that the entry at what you have interpreted for as being 1200 hours on April 9th might have been a rate change. But I think you then decided, and I don't mean that in any pejorative way, but you thought that actually that was a change of bag at midday. Yes. Just for the jury's benefit, you're looking at the prescription there, aren't you? Yes. Thank you. So there we see, it's the entry where I asked you just to confirm what you'd said earlier. You're saying it doesn't say 1210, it says 1200 hours. Is that right? I would read it as that, yes. 10 minutes either way, in this circumstance, probably doesn't make any difference. But this, in any event, shows a different bag. And I think we heard from several witnesses that the practice is to change a dextrose bag every 24 hours anyway. Yes. But the giving set doesn't change. Is that right? Dextrose is changed 24 hourly without fail. It's TPN that's 48 hourly. Well, you tell us. The changing of giving sets with dextrose. What's the policy? They would be changed. Every time? Yes, I don't... Sorry, I'm confused with what you're asking now. A dextrose bag, as I understand you to have told us, is changed every 24 hours. Yes. The bag is hooked up to a giving set. Yes. Connected to a giving set? Yes. Does the giving set have to be changed every time a bag of dextrose is changed? Not every time, no. No. Well, that actually was the proposition I was putting to you, but there we are, we got there. Sorry, I misunderstood. It's all right, it's not your fault. Despite the fact that the bag was changed, so looking at the table that Professor Hindmarsh took us through, despite the fact that the bag was changed at midday, 1200 hours, the insulin kept being administered to child L, didn't it? Yes. Yes, and we know that because if we look at page 2, we see the time at which the blood sample was received in the lab, being either 1826 or 1829. Yes. And that blood sample contained exogenous insulin, didn't it? I can't recall. Well, that was the evidence from the lab. Okay. So I'm going to suggest for your comment or your answer Now, not only was child L targeted on the first occasion whilst the bag was hanging, but he also got a second bag that had insulin in it. What do you say about that? I'd have to be guided by the evidence, the expert evidence. We have a third bag hung, don't we, at about 16:30 or thereabouts? Yes. So a third bag hung at 16:30 and the hypoglycemia continued? Yes. Fourth bag hung the following day when you were not working, on April 10th. It's a 15% bag at either 2:30 or 3 o'clock. Yes. And the hypoglycemia gradually resolved, didn't it? Yes. We end up, as we go from the 10th into the 11th, 2300 hours on the 11th, which is right to the end of page 3, with a resolved episode of hypoglycemia. Yes. And the reason for the hypoglycemia was that somebody had poisoned at least 2 glucose bags with insulin, isn't it? Yes. And that was you, wasn't it? No.